In the dark space between stars, a small fleet moved slowly. It was a human fleet, but no one would guess it by looking. The ships were old. Rust covered their hulls. Engines made strange sounds. Lights blinked like they were dying. To other races, these ships were a joke. A Zarn scout ship hovered nearby. It sent pictures to the alien fleet behind it. "Look at them," said Commander Yulo of the Zarn Empire. "Rusty cans flying through space. This is what the humans send?" The Zarn fleet laughed. 100 ships strong, clean and sharp, their weapons glowed with energy. Their scanners picked up no real threat. The human ships had no shields. Their weapons were cold. Their engines were weak. No life signs could be detected inside. "They are dead ships," said another Zarn officer. "Let them pass," said Yulo, amused. "Or better, destroy them. It will be fun." A small Zarn fighter rushed forward. It fired a bright plasma shot at one of the human ships. The plasma hit. Nothing happened. No shield flared, no return fire. The ship just kept moving. "Strange," said the pilot. "It should have melted through." He fired again, harder. The old ship's hull glowed, but still didn't break. The fighter got closer, closer. It hovered near the side of the human ship. Then something unexpected happened. The old ship turned. Not fast, not sudden, but slow, heavy, like something waking from a long sleep. And it fired. A single shot. Red. "Dirty! Ancient!" The fighter exploded in silence. The Zarn fleet paused. "How did it fire? Their systems are cold." "It was a lucky shot," Yulo said. "Send a squad. 10 fighters. Let's end this joke." 10 fighters moved out. Fast, agile, armed with the best tech. The human ships still drifted, slow and steady, heading toward the Zarn fleet. The 10 fighters attacked from all sides. 3 were destroyed in seconds. No one saw how. The others screamed through the comms. "Something's in the dark between the ships. Missiles without heat signatures. Engines are going dead. EMP?" Then silence. All 10 fighters were gone. Now there was no laughter. The human ships kept moving. "What are they?" Yulo whispered. "Check the data again. Are there any humans alive inside?" The scans returned. Still no life signs, still no heat, still no answers. One of the alien science ships moved closer. It tried to scan deeper. Sent in a drone. The drone passed through. A hole in the hull of the largest human ship. Inside, it saw metal walls, dark and silent. No light, just strange symbols. Earth language, but written in red. It reached a large room. There were pods, hundreds, maybe more. Machines blinked slowly. One pod opened. Something inside moved. "Pull back," the science officer yelled. Too late. The drone feed went black. Then the science ship vanished. No explosion, no message, just gone. The Zarn fleet panicked. "Retreat! Form a line. Call the core systems. Call the High Council." The human ship still moved forward. No rush, no anger. Just steady and silent, like ghosts. In a dark corner of the command ship, Commander Yulo sat in silence. He played back the last signal from the science ship. A broken voice. Human, but strange. Deep. Cold. It whispered, "Do not follow. Do not fight. We are the last war engines. We do not stop." Yulo looked again at the ships. So slow. So rusty. So wrong. He had seen fleets that glowed like suns. He had watched stars die in battle. But this was fear. The kind that crawled into your bones, because these ships weren't alive, but they weren't dead either. They were something else. Something waiting. And now they were awake. The human ships kept moving. They didn't change direction. They didn't answer messages. They didn't stop. The Zarn fleet had fallen back. Their best ships now formed a wall in space. They waited, weapons hot, shields up, scanners wide, but nothing helped. The rusted ships kept coming, slow and steady, like they had all the time in the universe. In a secret room aboard a Zarn command cruiser, the High Council met. They stared at the footage of the strange human fleet. Static filled the screen. They watched again and again as the science ship vanished without a trace. "We don't understand their tech," one counselor said. "They have no tech." Another shouted, "That's the point! Those ships should not be flying. They are old, older than any ship we've ever seen." But one alien, old and quiet, said something no one wanted to hear. "What if they don't fly with tech?" "Then how do they fly?" asked a general. The old alien looked up. His eyes were tired. "What if they fly by will?" On board one of the human warships, inside a room deep within the metal belly, an old man sat alone. His name was Commander Elias Rain. He had not seen Earth in 200 years. He did not sleep. He did not speak. He simply stared at the small red screen in front of him. It blinked once every 10 seconds, a reminder, a warning. "Do not stop!" Around him, the ship groaned. Pipes hissed. Rust fell like dust from the ceiling. But everything still worked, just barely. Elias reached for a control. His hand trembled, not from fear, but age. "Still flying," he whispered. "Still burning." He turned to a photo stuck to the wall. It showed Earth, blue, peaceful. "You told us to keep going, so we did. Years ago, centuries maybe, the humans built these ships for one reason, to never stop. They were not part of any new human fleet. These were from the old days, the final war, the last time Earth truly fought. These ships were not smart. They had no advanced AI, no sleek design, no energy shields. Instead, they were steel, fire, and fury, built by hand, maintained by soldiers, who had long since stopped being just human. Back on the Zarn ship, a scientist made a shocking discovery. The ships were powered by core ignition reactors, so old and unstable that even reading them risked a meltdown. And yet, somehow, they still worked. Worse, the ships had no autopilot systems. That meant only one thing. They are flown, manually. "But that's impossible," said the commander. "No one could survive that long inside such old machines." Scientist paused, then brought up something else. A message from a long-abandoned human outpost. Over 700 years old, it contained one sentence repeated many times. "The last war engines do not stop, because if they stop, the sleepers wake." The room went silent. "Sleepers?" The scientist nodded. "We believe each ship carries a deep core, a stasis chamber, some form of stored soldiers, or creatures, or something worse, locked in, asleep. But if the ship stops, they wake up." Commander Yulo, now pale and quiet, stood near the viewing screen. He watched as the human fleet got closer. They had no formation. They moved like drifting rocks. But the closer they came, the more systems on the Zarn ships began to fail. Sensors glitched. Power flickered. Targeting failed. It was as if the human ships carried some kind of field around them. Something that broke logic, that pulled everything down into silence. "We fired. We scanned. We tried to talk," Yulo whispered. "Nothing worked." "Then run," said his second-in-command. Yulo shook his head. "No, we need to understand. Because if these ships are just the beginning..." He didn't finish, because at that moment, one of the human ships turned its front camera toward them. No weapons fired, no threat was spoken, but across every screen, one line appeared in old human code. "We were told to never stop." In the silence of space, the human fleet passed the defense line. Not one shot was fired, not one ship turned to attack. They simply passed by. But every Zarn officer felt the same chill in their bones. Something worse was coming, and this fleet of rusted, slow, dying ships was just the first wave. The Zarn Empire could not sleep. Across their systems, alarms were high. Ships moved, borders closed. Satellites scanned deep space again and again, but the rusty human fleet had already passed. It left no trail, no damage, but no one forgot it, and no one could explain it. So the Zarn High Command made a choice. They sent a spy. His name was Kelzor, a shapeshifter, trained in over 90 languages. Could survive with no air, no heat, no gravity. He was the best. His mission: board one of the human ships, find out what powers them, and escape with the truth. The chosen ship was one of the oldest. It had no visible weapons. Its engines barely worked. It was covered in space dust and burn marks. A dead ship, or so they thought. Kelzor approached in a stealth pod. No response, no defense. The human ship did not even move. He entered through a small airlock, long frozen open. Inside, everything was dark. Kelzor activated his light. The beam showed rusted pipes, broken wires, thick steel walls. He moved slowly. No signs of life. But he did find something. A symbol on the wall, written in red human letters. Project, never sleep. He scanned it, sent the image back. Suddenly, his comms died. No signal, no connection, just silence. He moved deeper into the ship. The walls were tight. Everything felt heavy, like the air itself didn't want him there. Then he found the main chamber. It was huge. Rows and rows of large metal pods lined the floor, each one sealed. Thick glass on the front, ice behind it. He moved closer. Inside one pod was a human, or something that used to be human. Pale skin, wires in the skull, eyes closed but twitching, breathing, barely. Kelzor scanned the pod. Vital, signs detected. They were alive, all of them, dozens, maybe hundreds. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, not from speakers, from the ship itself. Unauthorized presence detected, defense mode, waking protocol level 1. Kelzor froze. One of the pods hissed, steam escaped. The glass began to open. He backed away, hiding behind a metal crate. The figure inside the pod stepped out. It looked human, but its eyes glowed red. Its movements were slow, but heavy, controlled. Wired into its back were cables that still glowed with faint power. The creature opened its mouth and spoke in perfect Zarn language. "You should not be here." Kelzor fired his stealth blaster. The bolt hit the creature's chest. It didn't move. The shot left a burn, but no pain. No scream, no fall. The creature took a step forward. Pain is a memory. We are beyond memory. It reached out and grabbed the blaster, crushed it. Kelzor ran. He raced through the halls. The lights now glowed red. Alarms were soft, but constant. "Waking protocol level 2, the ship said. He reached the airlock, tried to escape. It was closed, sealed shut. The ship had locked him inside. Kelzor turned and saw more pods opening. Down the hall, more figures stepping out, all wired, all pale, all silent. He screamed. Back in the Zarn command center, his final message arrived. It was broken, static, but one sentence came through clearly. They are not dead. They are waiting. The ship is alive. They are part of it. Then, silence. Kelzor was gone. The High Council watched the message over and over. One alien general said, "We must destroy the fleet," but another, older, wiser, shook his head. "You don't destroy the dead. You bury them. But what if they buried themselves? And now they're climbing back out." The human fleet still moved. No change. No answer. Just a slow march forward through space. But now the truth was known. These were not simple ships. They were living war machines, powered by the sleepers, human weapons too dangerous to use in the past, too dangerous to kill. So Earth locked them inside ships and sent them away, with one order: never stop, never sleep. Never wake the rest. But something had changed. One sleeper had woken up, and more pods were opening. Soon the galaxy would see what these ships truly were. Not relics, not ghosts, but engines of a war that was never finished. The galaxy remembered. Many wars, the Great Resource Wars, the Zarn-Biral conflict, the fall of the Relati moons, but no one remembered the final war of Earth because it had been erased. The Zarn High Council searched old data. They checked secret archives, forbidden systems, even old human messages captured during border raids. Most records ended the same way. Humanity joined the Council of Races in peace. But now that peace was shaking. Rusted ships from nowhere had crossed their territory, ships with no crew, no power, no logic, and yet nothing could stop them. So the Council dug deeper. They found something strange, a broken message over 700 years old, hidden in the wreckage of a crashed satellite. It said, "We used the last weapons, we erased ourselves, and we launched the war engines into deep space, so we would never become monsters again." Then silence. One counselor spoke. "What kind of war makes humans erase their own history?" Another replied, "A war they were winning." On one of the EU old human ships, the red lights blinked faster now. Inside the command room, Commander Elias Rain looked tired. He stood in front of a console. Dust covered the buttons. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. A message was flashing. Pods waking. 15. Waking reason, threat detected. Command. Do not slow. Do not stop. Rain sighed. "They told us we were too dangerous," he said. "They said we burned too hot, that we fought too well. So they locked us away, put us in the dark." He looked out the window. Stars moved slowly. But now something's changed. They're afraid again. Elsewhere in the galaxy, a human diplomat stood before the Council of Races. Her name was Lena. Marek, one of Earth's youngest ambassadors. She looked scared, but she told the truth. "Yes, those ships are ours," she said. "But they were made by the old Earth, the Earth before peace." An alien shouted, "Then call them back." Lena shook her head. "We can't. They don't listen to us. They were built to follow one order only. Which is? Never stop." Silence filled the chamber. Lena continued, her voice trembling. "During the final war, we made weapons that could think. Soldiers who didn't need food or rest. Ships that healed themselves. But we went too far. They were too good at war. So what did you do?" "We launched them into space, sent them away, before they turned on us, before we became monsters." The Council demanded answers. "How many ships are there?" Lena hesitated, then said, "We don't know. We erased the numbers on purpose." Back inside one of the war engines, a new sleeper opened his eyes. His name was Major Kellen Dre. He had been asleep for 300 years. As he stepped out of the pod, systems turned on, weapons unlocked, engines hummed louder. More soldiers walked the halls. Their eyes were cold. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. They had one mission burned into their minds. Do not stop. Do not surrender. If you wake up, finish the war. Meanwhile, the Zarn fleet tried something new. They sent a message. To the fleet, peaceful, careful, slow. We mean no harm. Please identify yourselves. We are not your enemy. A pause. Then a reply. But not through normal channels. It came as a pulse across every nearby ship. No words, just an image of Earth, burning, and one sentence in human script. We remember the war you made us forget. The Council was now in panic. Other empires joined the talks, the Biral, the Terek, the Mor'un. Some said, destroy the ships now. Others said, try to talk, try harder. But Lena Merrick gave a warning. They don't want to talk. They were made, for one thing, and if they think the war isn't over, she looked around the chamber, they'll finish it. Commander Elias Rain stared at the console. More pods waking, more soldiers walking the halls. He whispered, "If Earth sent the war engines away to stop the war, why are we waking up now?" Then the red light blinked faster. A new alert. Unknown. Signal detected. Old enemy code. Rain's eyes narrowed. They're back. He sat down at the control chair. Time to remind the stars what humans can do. The galaxy was trembling because something had been buried long ago. Something violent. Something unstoppable, and now it was rising. The war engines kept moving. Slow. Silent. Unstoppable. Across the stars, fleets watched. Empires whispered. Some prepared for battle. Others prepared to run. But inside the ships, something far more dangerous was happening. The sleepers were remembering. Inside, one war engine, Major Kellen Dre, stood before a cracked mirror. He stared at his face. The lines, the scars, the cold machine parts inside his skin. He touched the metal running down his jaw. Then he spoke, voice low and dry. "I remember fire. I remember cities falling. I remember the day peace became a lie." Behind him, other soldiers woke up. Each, one older than any war still recorded. Each one trained in a kind of violence the galaxy had forgotten. Commander Elias Rain stood in the main control room. He looked at a glowing wall. On it were names, thousands of names. Each one was a soldier locked in sleep. Each one had fought in the erased war, the war the galaxy tried to forget. But the war engines remembered everything. Rain whispered, "They called us heroes, then monsters, then ghosts. Now we are awake, and they act surprised." In the Council of Races, fear spread fast. Zarn leaders shouted. The Terek demanded preemptive strikes. The Morun offered peace envoys. Though none returned, one message echoed. In every meeting room. "What do the war engines want?" Lena Marek, the human ambassador, gave the only answer she had. "They don't want. They were made not to want. They were made to end wars, forever. And if they believe the war still lives," she looked at the council, "then they will finish it." One of the sleeping soldiers, Lieutenant Mira Sol, opened her eyes. Her pod opened with a hiss. Her breath came slow. In front of her, a data screen showed flickering images. Burning ships, dead cities, soldiers screaming, her own past. She didn't cry. She stood, picked up her weapon, and asked one question. "What year is it?" Another soldier replied, "Doesn't matter. The war's not over." Far from the council, in a cold, dark system, something else woke up. A beacon buried in ice. It blinked. It pulsed. Then it sent a signal into the stars. The signal was old. Human. Forgotten. But inside the war engines, they heard it. It was a code, a battlefield location. From the last days of the erased war, Major Dre read the message. Battle Site Omega. Last human stand, we were left behind. Commander Rain looked up sharply. If that site is still out there, then not all of us were buried. Meanwhile, an ancient alien race, the Droll Ven thought extinct, picked up the signal too. They remembered the war engines, they remembered running from them, and now they were coming back. Aboard the Zarn flagship, panic turned to action. Hundreds of warships formed a line. They aimed everything they had toward the approaching war engines. This time, they would not let the fleet pass. This time, they would fire. First, a countdown began, 10 seconds to full strike. 9, 8. Then something strange happened. The human ship stopped. Dead still. No lights, no movement, just floating in space. "They're stalling," a Zarn captain said. "Or waiting," another replied. Then from every war engine a voice spoke, old, human, cold. "You erased us, buried us, lied to the stars. Now we remember. Now you will too." Suddenly the stars around the fleet shifted, not just one war engine, not 20, but hundreds, coming out of deep space, out of black holes, from forgotten orbits, from behind moons, all of them moving toward the same place. Battle Site Omega. The council watched in silence. One Terran elder whispered, "This is not a return, it's a funeral march." But Lena Merrick shook her head. "No, this is something worse. This is a memory with guns." Back inside his ship, Commander Elias Rain opened a locked panel. Inside it was a switch covered in dust. He stared at it for a long moment, then he flipped it. The ship groaned. Lights turned blood red, all systems turned to war mode. He sat in the chair, placed his hand on the console, and said softly, "We're not ghosts. We're what happens when ghosts get angry." The dead remembered, and the galaxy would soon understand why they had been locked away. The stars above Battle Site Omega were cold and silent. Long ago, they burned bright during the last battle of humanity's forgotten war. Now, after centuries, the war engines were returning. Hundreds of human ships moved like ghosts across space. Rusty, slow, ancient, but not empty. Inside, the sleepers were fully awake, and they remembered everything. Commander Elias Rain stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the old battlefield appear on screen. He had not seen it in 300 years. Dead ships floated here. Human, alien, all torn apart. Some were nothing but twisted metal. Some still had corpses inside. Rain spoke softly. "This is where it ended, and maybe where it begins again." Major Kellen Dre checked his weapon. Others around him did the same. There were no cheers, no speeches, only silence. They all knew why they were here. Somewhere on this battlefield, something had survived. A signal had been sent, a cry from the past, and the war engines were answering it. In the distance, alien fleets gathered, the Zarn, the Terran. Even the moron enemies who had once fought each other now stood together. Their target was the same. Stop the war engines, but they didn't understand what they were facing. Not yet. The human ships stopped above the battlefield. Not one fired a shot. Instead, small pods launched from the lead ships, heading toward the wreckage below. Inside them were squads of old soldiers. Some more machine than man. They landed on the broken hull of an ancient space station. Once this was Earth's final command center. Now, it was nothing but bones and echoes. Lieutenant Mira Sol stepped inside first. Her boots crunched on old metal. The air was cold, the gravity weak, but her memories were strong. She looked around and whispered, "I died here once." Behind her, Major Dre nodded. "So did we all." They moved deeper inside. The station still had power. Not much, but enough. And deep in its center, they found it. A sealed chamber, still intact. The signal had come from here. Back on the councils, homeworld chaos spread. Lena Marek stood in front of the council again. "They're not attacking," she said. "They're searching. Something is down there, something they left behind." A Zarn general asked, "What if it's a weapon?" Lena answered, "Of course it is, that's what they were, weapons." The council argued, screamed, panicked, but none of them noticed what was truly happening. Inside the sealed chamber, the soldiers opened the door. It hissed open, air rushing out, and there, in the center of the room, was a human figure. Still alive, still. Wired to the station's core, still dreaming. Commander Rain's voice came through the comms. "We found one of the first." "General Reva Kyle." Kale's eyes opened slowly. He had been asleep for centuries. He was the one who gave the final order during the erased war. "Launch the war engines. Lock us away. End it all." And now, he looked at the soldiers standing before him, and he spoke. "I never thought I'd wake up. I hoped I never would." Major Dre asked, "Why now?" Kale's voice was quiet, broken. "Because the enemy has returned." Suddenly, alarms echoed through the old station. Red lights flashed. Enemy fleets had moved in, fast, Dozens of ships, weapons charged. The Zarn were done waiting. They were going to destroy the war engines before they woke up anything else. In space, the alien fleet opened fire. Blasts of energy lit the dark. Missiles screamed through the void, but the war engines did not run. They turned. For the first time in centuries, their full systems activated. Engines roared, armor shifted, weapons unfolded from hidden panels. Red lights burned through the darkness. Commander Rain stood tall on the bridge. "They want a war." He pressed a switch. "We'll remind them what that means." Hundreds of guns fired at once. The war engines woke, and the stars caught fire. The battle was not fair. The war engines were slow, but their shots were perfect. They didn't miss. Their armor didn't crack. Their crews didn't panic, because they had done this before, because they had been made for it. Alien ships fell quickly, fleets scattered, and still, the war engines pressed forward, calm and cold. They didn't chase. They didn't speak. They just cleared a path to the old battlefield, and when the smoke cleared, they had it. Battle Site Omega was theirs again. Inside the station, Kale gave one last order. "Send the signal to Earth. They need to know. We remember." Back on Earth, deep inside an old base, a forgotten monitor blinked. A message appeared. 5 words. "The engines have come home." Deep under Earth's surface, in an old mountain base, red lights blinked for the first time in 300 years. The signal from Battle Site Omega had arrived. On every screen, 5 words burned bright. "The engines have come home." A silent alarm echoed. Through dark halls, doors opened, old systems activated, and far below, something long forgotten woke up. General Sarah Vance stood in the control room. She was Earth's last living link to the War Engine Project. She had studied the history. She had read the sealed files. She had seen the truth the galaxy had tried to erase, and now it was back. "They're awake," she said quietly, "and they're not alone." A young officer beside her stared at the screens. "Should we try to call them back?" Vance shook her head. "You don't call back a storm. You prepare for it." "They're doing exactly what we built them to do," the officer asked. "And what's that?" Vance turned to him. "Win, no matter the cost. Across the galaxy, the Council of Races watched the war engines reclaim Battle Site Omega. Alien fleets had fallen, armies had failed, and now the humans were sending another signal, this time from Earth. One word: acknowledged. The war engines had not just survived, they had been heard, and Earth was answering. In the skies above Earth, great hangars opened. Rusty satellites turned to face the stars. Laser grids powered up. From a massive vault in orbit, a huge black ship emerged. It had no name, no markings, just a message etched into its hull. "Let history burn." General Vance stood before a large table covered in blinking lights. Each light marked a war engine returning home. Some were overgrown with vines. Others had alien marks burned into their armor. All of them were ready for war, and Earth was finally ready to accept them. "Reactivate the Hammer Protocol," Vance ordered. "If they want to remember the war, we'll help them finish it." Back at Battle Site Omega, Commander Elias Rain watched the stars shift. A fleet was coming. But this time, it wasn't alien, it was human. Modern ships, sleek, fast, advanced. Ships that didn't exist when the war engines were launched. "So Earth finally admits we exist," Rain muttered. Major Dre stood beside him. "They locked us away. Now they send reinforcements?" Rain smiled. "Maybe they realized something. Maybe they finally understand the war isn't over." The Council of Races held an emergency meeting. The Zarn were furious. The Terek prepared to evacuate colonies, and the Moor simply vanished. Everyone feared what Earth would do next, because this wasn't the Earth that had begged for peace. This was the Earth that had once built the most dangerous fleet in history, and that fleet had just come back online. On one of Earth's new command ships, Admiral Roshvek stood before a screen showing the old war engines. He had been trained to fear them, taught they were too violent, too cold, too dangerous. Now he was being ordered to fight beside them. He stared at the screen. "Are we sure this is the right move?" General Vance replied through the comms. "We don't have a choice. The galaxy thinks we're weak. Time to remind them we are not." The war engines received the message. It wasn't a command. It was a recognition, a salute. They responded by forming into attack formation, hundreds of ships, old and new, moving together for the first time in centuries. Red lights, black metal. Silent engines. Humanity had just reunited with its oldest soldiers. The enemy felt it first. A pulse in the dark, then heat, then fear. Because when the war engines and modern Earth ships attacked together, nothing stood in their way. Entire fleets vanished in seconds. Alien fortresses crumbled. The stars turned red with fire, and all across the galaxy, whispers returned. Old names, old warnings. One phrase repeated in 1,000 languages. The war machines of Earth walk again. On Earth, people watched the sky. They didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate, because they knew what was happening out there. This wasn't glory. This was a reckoning. The war that had been erased was now being written again, in fire and steel. Inside the lead war engine, Commander Rain received a private message. It came from General Vance. Just one sentence. "Welcome. Home, Commander." Rain stared at it. Then he looked at the stars. He whispered, "Home isn't a place. It's a war we never finished." And now, they would. The war was burning across the stars again. Alien empires fell one by one. The war engines, rusty, slow, ancient, moved through space like gods of steel, but they were not alone now. Earth had returned. Modern human warships flew beside them, new and old, fast and slow. Together, on board the lead war engine, Commander Elias Rain stood in the silence of the bridge. Alarms blinked red. Enemy signals filled the screens. But Rain's eyes were far away, looking at nothing. He whispered, "We were made for this. Not to live, not to rest, just to keep moving forward." Major Dre stepped beside him. "And if there's no end?" Rain gave a slow, sad smile. "Then we don't stop." At Earth's War Command, General Sarah Vance stared at the galaxy. Apt every dot was a battlefield, every flash was a death, and at the center, the war engines, still unstoppable, still remembering. She asked her team, "How many worlds have fallen?" A tech replied, "Too many." Another said, "But not ours. Earth stands strong." Vance nodded, but she looked tired. For how long? On a distant world, a small alien child watched the sky turn red. His mother pulled him inside. Ships burned overhead. War had come again. Not from aliens, but from humans, and leading them, the ghosts of a forgotten age. Back at Battle Site Omega, the old station now glowed with power. The dead had been buried, the missing had been counted, and the signal had changed. It now said, "No peace, no surrender, no end." Admiral Rosh Vex stood inside the newest Earth flagship. He had begun this war confused. Now he was something else. He watched the war engines fire again, melting an alien dreadnought in one shot. He asked quietly, "What happens when the engines finish this?" No one answered, because no one knew. Inside the war engines, the old soldiers didn't sleep. They didn't sing. They didn't even speak much. They just followed their orders, and their orders had not changed. In 300 years, end all threats. Protect Earth. Complete the war. Lieutenant Mira Soul sat inside her ship, staring at a photo of Earth. She hadn't been there in 3 centuries. She wasn't sure she wanted to go back. She wasn't sure Earth wanted her. She whispered to herself, "We were made to protect them. But what if they don't need us anymore?" Then her radio came alive. A message from Earth Command. Soul, return to base. You're being decommissioned. Her hand shook. Decommissioned? After everything we did? No reply, just silence. In space, the war engines began to slow down. Some stopped moving, some powered down. Earth had decided it was time to shut them off. The war was almost over. The enemy had broken. The galaxy was quiet again. But something wasn't right. Commander. Rain stood alone on the bridge. A countdown was blinking on the screen. Shut down in 60 seconds. He stared at it. Then he reached for the control panel. He disabled it, with one hand. No. He turned on the broadcast, to every war engine, to every human ship, to Earth itself. You don't get to shut us off. We won your war. You buried us once, never again. The war engines refused shutdown, every single one. They stayed awake, engines humming, guns warm, eyes open. They didn't attack, they didn't move. They just waited. Earth Command panicked. General Vance stared at the screen in shock. They overrode us. The text asked, "What now?" Vance said quietly, "Now we see what they really are." In the silence, a final message came from the war engines. We don't serve, we protect. Not just Earth, not just humans. We protect the memory of peace, and peace must be defended forever. Then, one by one, the war engines turned, not toward Earth, not toward enemy space, but toward the edge of the galaxy, toward the black, toward the unknown. Rain looked out at the stars. Maybe there's no more war here. But somewhere someone will need us. And we'll be there. The engines fired slowly, ancient and loud. They moved out of known space into the void. No orders, no base, just purpose. And in the dark, far from every empire, every council, every war, a whisper echoed, rusty, slow, ancient. But they never stopped. They never broke. And when all others fell, humanity's ships kept going. The end.